Hey everyone, welcome back to Soul Science with Risa. Today we're going to talk about the Sutratma, the pathway to the soul via the heart center. There are other pathways also, but the Sutratma is the most direct, most potent access point that is accessible to pretty much anybody at various stages of development, and even at higher or more developed stages. There's just simply more rounds of it. There's quite an infinite spiral of energetic reservoir that can be accessed via the heart center. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that today as a main point for connecting to the soul. So firstly, we have to talk a little bit about the centers of the body. So as a general note, when we say that human beings are basically self-identified and are living predominantly an individual life based on their own desires, their own fears, desire for safety, desire for satiation, we are describing them as living below the diaphragm, which is really the lower three centers: solar plexus, the sacral, and the root center. Okay, now there is nothing inherently wrong with these centers, by the way. These are just the centers that are the most dense, and they are rooted within the physical domain. And the process of awakening or connecting to the soul tends to begin as an opening through, well, for many it begins as an opening through the heart. There can also be a beginning of the flashing impulses that descend down from the Buddhic plane that the physical brain begins to be receptive to, and that can actually happen before people have any kind of heart opening, where that often looks like a beginning to wake up in the mind a little bit and look around and go, something's not right here, in whatever way that gets explored or uncovered. But so we're talking about the movement to the upper centers. Now, when we consider the heart center, we have to think about the fact that it is the fourth, which means it's the mediating center, right? Below the heart, the three lower centers; above, the three higher centers. So it's a mediating force between the upper and lower, in the same way that the root center is considered the base of our human physical energetic system, the root chakra. The heart center is considered to be the base chakra of a higher system. So we can think about it in that way, that it's the spiritual center which becomes the spiritual foundation for a greater system. The root chakra itself is it's not that it's not spiritual, but it's of the physical plane. And yes, there's kundalini and all of the stuff that happens when the upper centers connect to the lower, which is beyond the scope of this video. But yeah, so the root is the base of the physical system. The heart is the spiritual root of another system, and certainly just within our own human energetic system with the 7 centers, it is the central point. So yeah, more and more people are having openings through the heart these days. It's a promise too with the Aquarian age, as Jupiter is a second ray planet and is connected to the heart center and is the esoteric ruler of Aquarius as we move into that age. As well, we've got a religious revival and resurgence now with the Christ returning. There are many, many people having experiences of Christ. It is pretty much guaranteed at some point to have a connection to Christ because of his connection to the crucifixion and that process of giving way to the soul, the baptism process. This all anchors, it begins in the heart, this process. So the heart becomes our energetic reservoir for movement when we begin to polarize there. But what happens before that is there's an elevating up and out of the solar plexus center, which is it's kind of the basic central point of emotional holding in the body. It's the main desire center, and the sacral center kind of rises up from its place into the solar plexus center as well. So it's not just like sacral center is a desire for, let's say, sexual satiation, but the solar plexus is desire for a myriad of things in the human life, a desire for actualization of the personality's gifts, attaining materiality, getting the house you want, all of these kinds of things. And when the solar plexus is feeling relaxed and open, that's usually, we often experience that when we've had some sort of desire satiated, which is, no coincidence that it's situated around where the stomach is, right? And that's where, when we eat, all the food goes there. So that's where it lands. Ah, yes, I am full. I'm full now, right? So we're filled through the solar plexus. Anyway, there is an elevating up out of the solar plexus into the heart center. The planet that rules this process is Neptune, which is a sixth ray planet, and the higher octave, or the sacred planet of the sixth ray, in contrast to Mars, which is the non-sacred planet to the sixth ray. So we're talking about the elevation up out of what is basically the self-oriented identity, body identification with the physical form, of which the lower three centers are concerned with, into that which is experienced as cosmic consciousness, the God consciousness, self-realization as love, God as love as the cosmic principle, the Christ, okay? There is, the Christians who go through awakenings, their experience in Christ, talk about particularly the born agains, talk about a raising up out of hell. I was in hell before and now I'm saved. The saving principle, which is connected to Pisces as well, but it is being elevated up out of the astral plane, and not that everything upon the astral plane is necessarily evil, but there is a certain point where, the satiation of selfish desires tips over and becomes excessive, and this is where we run into all kinds of trouble, and it doesn't lead to anywhere good. So being saved, elevated up and out of the Maya, in a way, the lower three realms, the realm of form, into the heart center. So that's Neptune. Neptune governs that process. So that's the basic esoteric language explanation of what's going on. We can talk about it as well before I move on to what does it kind of look like as a process when we start moving with this. That's the real juicy stuff. But just once again, I'll do a real basic diagram here. Got our little person, and then the heart center. Okay, so we've got our little dude here. This is my amazing artistic diagram of the soul looking like a fried egg. And we've got the elevation from the, this is terrible, and probably not useful at all. Okay, it's a bit of fun, whatever. So elevation up, out of the solar plexus. This is, and the Mars aspect, by the way, okay, because Mars is the lower expression of the sixth ray. When we elevate it up out of the desire nature, the I want, it moves to the I am devoted to, elevating from the solar plexus, to the heart. I'm devoted to the many. So that's the redirection of the Mars energy, where desire for self is transmuted into aspiration, aspiration for the soul. Love of humanity, seeing that just the satiation of these selfish desires is not enough. It's not enough. And it doesn't take the aspirant, the devotee, to where they want to go. So, yeah, Pisces is a saving sign. We return to the Father's home, and that is found in the heart center. Now, what does elevating up to the heart center look like? How does that process, how is that undertaken? It can be different for everyone. Usually there is some degree of suffering before a transition into this movement happens. But it doesn't have to be going through a really awful life crisis to get to that point either. There may just simply be a feeling of yearning, of longing, and a real inquiry as to the nature of love. And I would say that's actually where it starts. It's to inquire as to what is love. Because mostly the way we use it, particularly without the limitation of our Western language, love tends to actually more often than not mean emotional attachment and the getting from others what the self wants. When we start asking about the nature of love, it brings us to many preliminary heart lessons, the lessons of giving and receiving, that's an open circuit. Have you ever received a gift from someone where they weren't really giving, they didn't really have you in mind when they got the gift, but perhaps they got you the gift because they just wanted to feel like they did a good thing by getting you the gift? If you can remember a situation like that, and you can actually have enough sensitivity to check in with your own energetic system, there's a kind of contracting that is experienced around the heart center. And that's because to give something has to come from an authentic place for the person to receive it. So in other words, if you're giving a physical gift, but you're not actually in the spirit of giving, there's a certain discomfort in it. So giving and receiving, and of course as a giver, if you give someone something sincerely and they really receive it and appreciate it, there's as much satisfaction and fulfillment in the heart of that experience as well. So gratitude comes with that, giving, receiving, gratitude. And then going beyond that, it is, what is it to live a soulful life? To live a soulful life is to live a life of love. And what does that look like? Then we come up against all the reality of looking at the decisions we make in our lives and how we've built our lives based on not the love principle. And that requires a bit of hard looking at what's going on. How have your relationships been governed? Are they from personal satisfaction? Is there consciousness there? How do I relate sexually with others? How do I treat my vocation? All of these things come into question when we start asking about what does it mean to live a life of love. When we start becoming truthfully committed to reorienting, and that is a key word, reorienting our life towards the movement of love, that is to say, taking not just the best actions that are part of love for the self, and that's not satiating your personal desires. It's more like, if you've got a broken foot, go to the hospital. So it's like care for oneself, doing what's needed to make sure you're functioning and etc. Am I moving from fear? Am I in this job because I am afraid of not having money? That's a big one for people. A common one when there's a vocational shift, when there's a sense of the energy getting sucked dry in wrong vocation, wrong job. Of course, sometimes, depending on the development of the individual, it may just be that you're in a situation where you need to do mundane or menial work, and that actually may be the decision of superior love in the circumstance. So it's not black or white, but yeah, we can come to a realization that the way that we're moving and making decisions and where we're staying in places in our lives, whether it's a relationship or a vocation or a house, that we're doing that out of fear. So when we start reorienting towards the heart, and the deeper we go, the reality of moving from fear comes up. And usually this is the crisis that people come to as they go deeper and deeper and deeper into the heart center. Because as I mentioned or insinuated before, there are layers to the heart, and there's a certain point where there's like a core that pops, and then there's a flooding of energy that comes from the soul via that sutratmic thread. So at that point, usually is when we get to Christ, and we get to the secrets of kenotic wisdom, kenotic practice, kenosis, Kenosis, kenosis. To be kenotic is a practice of self-emptying. And that is, what is the maximum capacity that I can give? And going more and more and more. And right there we come up against, because remember I said that the 3 lower chakras are connected to the physical realm, we come up against a great deal often of physical resistance. Because prior to this point, the body has been moving from its fundamental selfishness. So to reorient your personality towards love, it requires a surrendering and a giving up of the body to become an agent of that love which is unfolding. And this could look like anything. So, we've been talking about the rays on this channel and what that actually looks like, with the soul rays and colored through the natal chart and all of this. that when it comes to the soul ray, we can get a bit more detailed about what the soul is here to do later, but I'm talking about kind of right at the beginning where we're looking to get access to soul energy or spirit energy, God energy, and to start building connection to soul. It's not really particular at this point, okay? So kind of toss that aside for the purposes of our discussion today. The point of what I'm speaking about here is opening the heart center. And even though your soul could end up having a really specific purpose in terms of, I don't know, let's say artistry, becoming a soul-based artist. Okay, that's kind of a specific field. If you're at a stage where you're just opening the heart center, you might not be taking actions that have anything to do with artistry. It may just, you go, okay, I'm going to go love, love, love. What is the most loving action I could do today? And it might be, I'm going to call every one of my family members and tell them that I love them. I'm going to go to that colleague I have that's been depressed at work and give her a big hug. I'm going to clean up my closet because that is a loving act I can do for myself, and I've been putting that off for a long time. It can be as simple and mundane as these actions, but you do more and more and more and more and more, despite the feelings of resistance and laziness and inertia and drag of the body. And it is a discipline, the discipline of love. Go, go, go. More loving, more loving. And the more you do, the more it rubs up against the resistance of the personality and the more uncomfortable it gets. And that here we have the lesser burning ground, the fire by friction, the friction of the two selves. So this is what we confront the deeper we go. But here, that polarization into the Neptunian aspiration, the devotion of that sixth ray quality, the devotion has to elevate us up out of identification with the resistance that we feel in our form life, to move with greater and greater levels of consciousness. More. I'm exhausted. I don't want to. Nah, give it more shit. More. And this is basically, in essence, the mystical teachings. And yes, all mystical paths lead to the occult discipleship paths, but as metaphysicians and occult practitioners, we cannot make the mistake of thinking that we're beyond the mystical aspect when perhaps we haven't actually made a proper connection to that. And the reality is you're never going to not be engaged with a Sutratmic connection. There are bigger cycles, so you could go through a process of doing a kenotic daily practice, as I said, more love, more love, more love. And there may be a point that you cross where it breaks open and you've got all this heart energy, and then it can start to fade because there are cycles to these things. We can't just be alive and on fire all the time with love. There are other aspects and other dimensions to our existence. But so there are greater and lesser cycles. There are waxing and waning periods of surges that can come from the soul. And we know when it's time to drop into a Sutratmic kenotic practice, when we are feeling drag, limitation, resistance, stagnation in our life. We need to draw in more resources from the soul and from the spirit aspect. And to do that, we kenotic practice. More love, more love, more love. Another important, very helpful tool is prayer. It's an oldie but a goodie, and for a good reason. Prayer, the meditating on the soul, the communing with the soul. This is what the Christian does when they're praying to Jesus. Christ is that one who was the ultimate kenotic practitioner, right? He fully emptied himself to the point of being crucified to be reborn in his divine self. Okay? So this is the process. Prayer, drawing in God. When I was going through my first really big opening with this, I found music so helpful, a certain kind of devotional, mystical, ethereal music that would just get me in the zone of that, this drawing in process. And coming back around to the solar plexus thing and the transmutation, the transference of desire into aspiration, there's a process. This is a process of the getting so deep to the core of desire, because we go, desire for things, desire for sex, desire for love, whatever the selfish one wants. If we go to the deepest aspect of longing, what's at the core of longing is the longing to be filled by God, by the soul. That's why all the monks and the priests, the ministers, they go, you know, the ones who, particularly the ones who renounce all form life, you know, they don't get married or anything. They go, you know, people trying to fill their holes with all kinds of things, with sex, with money, with TV, and there's only one thing that can fill that hole, and that is God, and that is right. We are born with a hole, fundamentally broken, and that hole is at the center of the heart, and we need to go to the core of our longing, the longing of the body aspect. And here it is a slight inference to the femininity of this process. When we're actually pouring out love, it's almost quite masculine because we're penetrating our life with consciousness. It's love, love, love. But the actual drawing in of that consciousness, there's a receptivity in that. And the longing aspect, the desire aspect of I long to be fulfilled, to be filled up with God. And we transmute however that desire or the need for satiation is playing out in other aspects of our lives into the longing for the only true thing that can fulfill us and make us whole. This is why many people who go through Jesus awakenings, savings, say, have these miraculous stories about being drug addicts or being really sick, and then they had that connection to Christ and it was healed, or they didn't have the addiction anymore. Yes, because it's connection to the Sutratma, through the Sutratma, I should say, to that which is infinite. So, elevation from the solar plexus, body identification to the love principle, asking questions about what is love and how am I practically living life or not living life in love? Where can I give more love? How can I empty myself out every day, give the maximum amount of love I can give every day? What can I do to foster a sense of inner prayer or meditation or an inner ritual, meditative process to draw in that energy? All of these things, this is the summary of what I'm talking about today, and these are the things that I would encourage everyone to start inquiring into, practicing, because it is the heart that serves. And the soul, regardless of whatever ray you end up being on or whatever particulars we find out later down the track in terms of specifically what we're doing, and a lot of that has to come through the connection through the Antakarana, which is much more subtle and a bit more refined for later, but for now it's sort of really like service. The soul is about service, fundamentally, prior to any of the rays and what its character is like when we get closer to it. It is about love and it is about service. And we must be willing to break that attachment to our sense of comfort and safety and basically have a little bit of will, the will to love. That's all for now. See you next time.